Welcome to another chapter podcast with your hosts, Claire and Rebecca.
Do you love books? Well, you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss all things books.
Welcome to chapter 6 of Another Chapter, the podcast. In this week's episode, Rebecca had the joy of chatting to Aoife Cassidy. If you're on Bookstagram, you'll know Aoife as at Little Cass Reads. I first met Aoife when I joined. She welcomed me with open arms and was so lovely and so kind and so encouraging. And I was very lucky to be able to meet Aoife in real life. And she was just as nice there as she is online, which is such a lovely thing to see. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to partake in this week's interview as I was in at work back after the Christmas holidays. So Rebecca caught up with Aoife, and I hope that you guys enjoy what they have to say as much as what I do.
Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself for people that maybe don't know you?
My name is Aoife. I am 42 years old. I'm from Dublin, born and raised in Dublin, and my parents still live nearby. I am a solicitor by profession, but after my third child, who's here beside me today at home sick from school, I luckily had the choice to stay at home with the children full time. So I've been at home with them and then went on to have another child after that. So I have 4 kids, aged 11 down to age 4. Spent a lot of my 20s living abroad. So when I graduated from university, I moved to Germany, lived there for several years, trained and practiced as a solicitor over there, and then moved to London with the same firm that I was working for in Frankfurt. And then met my husband when I was home for a friend's wedding in Dublin, and we did the long distance thing for a while, and then I moved home to Dublin then. So yeah, and then as soon as I moved home to Dublin, his job transferred him to London. So but eventually anyway, we both settled in Dublin. So that is my story. I set up a Bookstagram account in 2021, I think. I'm actually not sure. When I posted recently to say that it was my bookstaversary, my 2-year bookstaversary, and afterwards I was like, 2 years or 3 years? I think it's 2 years. I have had a personal account on Instagram since 2012, early 2012. So after my first child was born, I decided to set up an Instagram account to kind of chart his life. And it was a private account, and I was only connected to people who I knew in real life. Was very concerned about not having the kids up there publicly or anything like that. So I had a private Instagram for years. And then I suppose after I had my 4th child, I started posting book reviews to my personal account, and most of my friends are not really that into reading. They've no interest. So eventually worked up the courage to set up a public account that was just dedicated to books, you know, keep the family off to the personal account and keep the books to this one. And here I am.
Excellent. And we're delighted to have you. So if we just go back actually just when you were mentioning about your kids, what was your favourite book as a child?
So I was an avid reader as a child. I gobbled up books. It was a running joke at home. We used to be sitting at the breakfast table, the dinner table, with my leg cocked up to one side and a book in one hand, and then eating the dinner with the other hand. Loved reading. And I think probably like most people of my generation, I loved Roald Dahl, loved all of his books, loved The Worst Witch. Mildred Hubble was one of my favourite characters. That was when I would have been quite small. Enid Blyton was a big favourite as well. Famous Five, Twins of St. Clair's, Malorie Towers. Couldn't get enough of those boarding school books. And then went on to kind of Sweet Valley Twins, The Babysitter's Club, Sweet Valley High, then on to Point Horror, R.L. Stine, Christopher Pike, all of those. And then kind of when I hit about 14, 15, I absolutely loved English in school, and I started to read then some of the classics, and The Great Gatsby. I absolutely loved that book as a teenager. Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, a lot of those kind of books that I think a lot of people my age would have read at the time. Some of them were on the school curriculum, and others were just ones that my dad encouraged me to read. He's a big reader. And he sort of really fostered my love of reading.
Excellent. And actually that kind of leads nicely into like, what are your earliest memories of reading? I presume it would be at home.
Yeah, when we were really small, my dad used to make up stories. Like, he's got a really vivid imagination, and he used to tell us stories at bedtime. He would make them up. And there was one particular story, and he still tells that story to my own kids, about the little piggy from London. And the little piggy from London went on all these great adventures. And this story has continued on for years and years, and my own kids absolutely love it now too. But that would have been my very earliest memories of storytelling and things like that. And then reading. I think George's Marvellous Medicine is probably the earliest book that I remember reading by myself and absolutely loving it. And I actually still have my original copy. And whenever my parents bought me a book, my dad would write an inscription on the inside cover. So I still have all those original ones. And I was looking back actually, and I found this one upstairs. So this is my copy of The Great Gatsby. And my dad has written in it, "To Aoife, with love from Mammy and Daddy, the 19th of February 1994. So I would have been 13 at that stage, yeah. But every book they gave me, my dad would write an inscription in it. Even if I got it from Santa, he would take the book then and he would write a message on the inside of it. So I've got so many books from when I was a child with that. So it's so lovely. They're just lovely memories to have. Yeah, my dad was a great, great reader. He would bring me to music lessons on Wednesday nights, and we would chat about books the whole way to the music lessons and home again. And we still talk about books. So yeah,
that is
those
lovely.
are probably my earliest memories, I would say.
Yeah, that is such a nice it's such a lovely thing to have. Is that something you do with your own family now, the inscriptions? Or
I do, yeah. Well, they read the big series of books, they've like the Dogman ones. So I started off with the first couple of books, you'd write the inscription, and then like they're on book 18 and you're like, this is kind of meaningless at this point, But certainly if I was given them the first in a series or a special book, a particular kind of one-off one, like those Hannah Gold ones, oh my God, I just love those books. I would put an inscription, because I would hope that for the ones they particularly loved, they will have that and they'll treasure that forever, like I do myself. I just couldn't ever imagine parting with those books.
It's so lovely as a reader to see even one of the kids picking up a book voluntarily. It is a lovely feeling, and it's nice to be passing that on to them.
Like, what kid doesn't love reading when they're small? Like, they love it. They absolutely love it. But I can see now, with my eldest, he's not as into reading as the next guy. He has to be a bit encouraged a bit more. I have to sort of find books, take him to the library, really encourage him to push him out of his comfort zone to try different things, whereas the next lad, he will literally read anything. That's what I would have been like. I would have picked up anything and given it a go. But it sort of, some kids, once they hit the teenage years, they're so consumed with what they have to read in school that they just won't read as much themselves, But anyway, that's life too. We can't all be bookworms, and that's just the way it is, though. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about how you get to read so much, because the big thing that both myself and Claire are in awe of is you are such a prolific reader, and you read across such a range of genres and such a range of authors as well. You've mentioned you have kids. How do you get to read so much? Because I'm sure people are very interested in that.
Yeah, when you love reading as much as I do, you will just find any opportunity to squeeze in a few pages, or and I mean, you're a huge reader yourself, Rebecca. You read more books than me, I'd say, last year. But basically, like, any chance I get, I will read a few pages. So I'll always have my Kindle in my handbag. I will always have an audiobook on the go. There's a book in every room in the house, so I could have 3 or 4 books on the go at any one time. But being honest with you, most of my reading is done in the evening time. I don't really watch any television. The kids hog the TV in the evening. They go to bed at about 9. I go up with them, and I would read then myself in bed for the rest of the evening. So I could read till 11:30. I could read for 2.5 hours. My phone goes on Do Not Disturb from about 9 or 9:30. And then I just read away. And I suppose I'm a fast reader, I would say. I probably do. I can get through books fairly quickly, particularly if it grabs me. If it's got a good opening, I'm in there. I find it hard to put it down. I'd also say, like, if I'm not enjoying something, I'll just put it to one side. I might just park it and come back to it another time, or it could be months or years before I, ever go back to it, if I do at all. But I'll always just try, pick a book that I'm in the mood for. So that would be a big thing for me. Audiobooks then. So I would have BarBox, I have Audible, I have Scribd, so many subscriptions. And I will generally have an audiobook on the go. Now, I actually don't listen to that many audiobooks. I might get one or two in a month. I think a lot of bookstagrammers would listen to more audiobooks than I do. It's just, I don't know, I do like listening to books on audio, prefer non-fiction to fiction on audio, but I do listen to both. But generally speaking, I'd rather read a book in print or on an ebook if I can, unless it's a memoir narrated by the author, in which case love it on an audiobook. Then that's the only way to listen to it, I think. It just brings the book to life. But yeah, just squeeze in a read. So if I'm folding laundry, or if I'm pottering in the garden, or I'm out in the car, or I'm getting my hair done, whatever it is, I'll always have a book with me and I'll be reading or listening.
Yeah, that's great. And I have very much gone that way as well. I had a fierce lull there for a few years when the kids were very small, but this last year I've been the same. Like, I'm never without my earphones.
And I think that's brilliant. You know, like, I think whatever way you can read, all reading is good reading, no matter what the format is. You know, it's so meditative as well. Like, it's just good for your soul. It's so much better than scrolling on your phone. You know, I think that's something I'd say to people is, like, if you find yourself scrolling, just stop, just put the phone down and do something else. Like, you know, go into your borrow box and listen to a book, or, you know, pick up your Kindle and read a few pages.
Absolutely. And is there any particular book that you would recommend for someone who wants to get into or back into reading? Maybe it might be an author, or is there a specific book?
I would say, if you've previously been a big reader and you're experiencing a bit of a lull for whatever reason, you could go back and pick an old favourite, maybe pick a book that you loved in the past and reread it, or pick a page turner, pick something that is either a thriller or a domestic thriller, or something that is an addictive read, say like Mad Honey or one of Andrea Mara's books, something that you will not be able to put down. It will just reignite that kind of passion for reading that you have. Or maybe try an audiobook instead. So if you find that you just don't have the time, maybe when you're out for a walk, instead of listening to music or instead of listening to a podcast, listen to a memoir. So listen to, I don't know, Louis Theroux, one of my favourites, or Michael J. Fox, or Clarissa Ward, Samantha Power's book, whatever it is that you're interested in, whether it's politics, whether it's music, whether it's Hollywood, Prince Harry, whatever it is that you're into, you know, pick an audiobook narrated by the author and listen to it when you're out walking, or when you're doing housework, or when you're driving, or when you're on your commute home from work, and see if that kind of helps you squeeze in a little bit more reading. And then the other thing I'd say is, you pick a short book, like one of Claire Keegan's books, or one of those quick reads from the reading agency, like there's a Graham Norton one and a Kate Moss one, there's a few others. Pick one of those. They're like 100 pages. So pick a short book. And I just think, you know, small steps, set yourself small goals, like 15 pages a day, that kind of thing, and you'll get there. And Sinead, Tired Mammy Book Club, like her initiative of Tired Mammy 30 minutes is just genius as well. Like 30 minutes out of your day, 30 minutes in the evening before you go to sleep, or whenever it is, whenever you can squeeze it in, like just pick up a book in some form, you know, and give it a read. Yeah. And I would also say to people, like, don't force yourself to read a book you're not enjoying, because you're never going to get back into reading that way. If you're not enjoying it, put it down. It might just be you're not in the mood. It might be a book that you're never going to like. So just put it down and read something else. And you could always come back to that at a later date, you know.
Definitely. And I know that has happened to me. I would be a bit of a mood reader as well, and there are some books that I just did not get into that I've picked up at later dates and loved. Just it wasn't the right time. Who would be an auto buy author for you? You know, no matter what they come out with, you'll buy it and you'll read it. So many now, and even more since joining Bookstagram. Sally Rooney is definitely one. I mean, I didn't enjoy her latest book all that much, but I think she's a fantastic writer, and I would read anything she brings out. Like, you know, I really enjoyed her first two books and a couple of short stories from her that I've read. So I know she's such a hyped author, but I do think she's a real talent, and I would definitely read anything she writes. I love Curtis Sittenfeld, Claire Keegan, Andrea Mara, Louise Kennedy. Oh my God, like I loved her short story collection, The End of the World is a Cul-de-sac. So I just couldn't wait to read Trespasses, and oh my God, I loved it. It was one of my favourite books last year. So I can't wait to see what she writes next. She's a real idol for me, because not only do I love her writing, but I love the fact that she had a completely different career. She was a chef and only came to writing much later in life, like in her 50s. She went along to a writing class with Una Mannion, who's a friend of hers. Una Mannion wrote A Crooked Tree, and she has a new book out this year. And she dragged Louise along to a writing class, I think in Sligo. And it turned out that Louise had this massive talent for writing, like this untapped kind of reservoir within her, you know. So yeah, I think she's amazing. I love her, and I can't wait to read whatever she writes next. I just buy anything
she writes. Love Emily St. John Mandel as well. Loved Sea of Tranquility, Glass Hotel, Station 11. She's just so good. She's so clever. She's such a good storyteller. Love her writing. And then Louis Theroux, I have to throw him in there. I do love him. I've loved all of his books so far. I love him. Like, I love it's just his little quirky. He sang Jiggle Jiggle. Oh, my 6-year-old just whispered to me.
He did.
Jiggle Jiggle.
He
He does sing Jiggle Jiggle. He did, yeah. I mean, I just even love his Instagram. He's so funny. He's so quirky and so funny. He's maybe in a Quartet, so I'm sure not everybody likes him, but I just love how he approaches things. I love how he gets people to open up to him, you know, and he's sort of odd, and I like that about him too. Yeah.
I can see on your face here how enthusiastic you are about him, though, which is great. Like that someone is making you that happy and that smiley when you think about them is wonderful.
Oh, I know. Oh, look at like his book that came out last year was really good, Through the Keyhole. It was sort of his COVID lockdown diaries, and on the one hand it's very mundane, it's very much just about ordinary family life, but on the other hand, like, it's just so funny. Some of the stuff he comes out with is so funny. He really he opens up all about his marriage and the arguments he has with his wife and his parenting and is he drinking too much, and I just like his style. I like his style.
And just actually, like, what is an underappreciated book that you love? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, a couple. I had a good think about this. I loved a book called, and I might have a copy of it here, it's called From Caucasia with Love by Danzy Senna. This one here. It was just called Caucasia when it was published in the US. And it was over here in the UK and Ireland, it was called From Caucasia with Love. And I read it after reading Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half, which I loved.
Yes.
This was a book that she said inspired her, or was a book that she kind of took inspiration from. And it touches on, like, or a lot of the topics dealt in are about, like, passing, you know, and the whole concept of passing. Like Nella, if you enjoyed Nella Larson's Passing and Brit Bennett's Vanishing Half, you would love this too. It's a really, really good book. It was actually, I think it was nominated for the Dublin Literary Award way back, like in 2000 maybe, or something like that. And I read it a few years ago. When was it written? I'm trying to see here. 1998 it was written. Yes, I think it was nominated in 99 or 2000 for the Dublin Literary Award, and it's an absolutely brilliant book. It's a 5-star read for me. It's about two sisters whose parents are like a white activist mother and a black academic father, and the parents split up and the sisters split. So one sister, Birdie, who can pass for white, goes off on the road with her mother. They're on the run, and the other sister stays with her father, and they're separated, and it's sort of about their search for each other, but it's brilliantly written, so I would highly recommend that. And another one then that sort of flew under the radar a little bit, I know it was longlisted for the Women's Prize, but Kathleen McMahon's Nothing But Blue Sky, I loved that too. I know lots of people have read it, but I do think it's one of those that probably wasn't maybe as big a deal in Ireland as maybe it might have been. And she's got a new book out in February, which I really can't wait to read too, actually. It's interesting as well. It's like a female author, Irish female author, but writing in the voice of a man. And he's reflecting back on his marriage to his wife, Mary Rose, who died. That's not a spoiler, it's in the blurb. And he's reflecting back on the marriage and what he could have done differently and how things could have been different and how much he loved her. And it's the most gorgeous book. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's just a really quiet, reflective read. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
There are two to add to the list. So that's great. So just moving on to kind of the Bookstagram aspect. No, so you've already explained kind of what made you join Bookstagram. You were posting on your private page and felt you took the leap into the public sphere. So what would be your favourite parts about being on Bookstagram?
Oh, it's the people, like, at number one, isn't it, really? Like, I mean, we've made so many good friends. Like, I mean, I've met so many people. There were a couple of people. I knew Chloe, Nurse Fancy Pants, in real life. Our husbands were childhood friends. So we actually knew each other from a long time ago. I was actually at Chloe's wedding. She was at our wedding as well. But we weren't, I wouldn't say we were particularly close, but we've become better friends probably through Bookstagram. And then Sinead, Tired Mommy Book Club, has become a very good friend in real life too. But so many others, connected with so many like-minded people. I think, like, within my own circle of friends at home, I don't have that many friends who are really into reading. So it's so lovely to connect with like-minded people, both in Ireland and abroad. Like, there's so many people that I chat to regularly regularly who are in the States or in Canada, who, you know, if we all lived on the same road, we would just be one massive book club. It would be so lovely. But it's just great to connect with other like-minded people, and it's great to find out about new books that maybe you haven't heard about, or even backlist books that you didn't read that you missed, you know, from a few years back. So yeah, I love it all. And then obviously my reading habits have changed a little bit. I've started to read more new books before they're published, and like that to me is such a privilege. It's something I will never take for granted. You know, whether it's an ebook, like an advanced electronic copy of a book, or whether it's a book I get in the post. It's such a privilege to read a book before it's published. Like, so very grateful to publishers and authors who send those to me in advance, you know. It is.
And I think as a bookworm, like you can't imagine anything better than being given books. Like, that is
living the dream.
It's so
living the dream. It's so lovely.
And it's such a positive corner of the internet. And I think everyone would say that. Like, it's very, you'd have to really go out of your way to find negativity on Bookstagram, in fairness. Definitely within the spheres, I suppose, we're all kind of moving in anyway, which is lovely to know. So it's quite a safe space, which is great.
It's safe, and it's inclusive, and it's friendly, and it's fun, and like, I mean, you know, sort of gone from, you know, some of the kind of virtual online chats to the in-person meetups, which are just fantastic, and the book launches. It's such a lovely, welcoming community. I would encourage anyone who is sort of on, you know, from the outside looking in, who like follows accounts and is doing loads of reading and kind of would think about it, like, just do it, just take the plunge and do it. It's lovely, you know. There's no rules around how often you have to post or what kind of books you have to post about. Just whatever it is that you're enjoying, you know. Yeah, it's lovely. It really is a lovely community to be a part of. One of the best things I ever did.
And how would you describe your Bookstagram aesthetic, or your kind of approach to Bookstagram?
My aesthetic? I don't really have one, I suppose. I probably am I'm definitely more of a read a book, review a book than kind of post stacks of books, or I don't really do many of the reading challenges, and I don't tend to do those posts where I tag lots of people, purely because if I sign up to too many reading challenges, it would just stress me out, and I would end up not reading what I really want to read. So I try to challenge myself to read outside my comfort zone, but also to kind of read what I actually enjoy reading, what I like to read. I probably don't do enough reels and things like that. I find that after I posted a couple of reels, my engagement goes like way up for a while. It's like as though Instagram likes me.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And has me appearing in more people's feeds maybe, or something like that. Yeah. But I'm definitely an accidental reel maker. Like, when I made my first reel only recently, and it was because Instagram said this one looks good as a reel. I was like, okay, I get the message. But yeah, no, I don't really have a particular aesthetic. It's mainly pictures of the books with the odd picture of me every now and then, which I absolutely cringe when I'm posting, but they're always like ferociously popular posts. I think people do like to know who it is behind the account. So it can be nice to just tell people a little bit about yourself. Yeah.
So what are you currently reading?
I am reading this book at the moment, A Heart That Works by Rob Delaney, which is an absolute heartbreaker.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I bought it a couple of weeks ago over Christmas. Shopping one day and I just thought, I have to buy it. I think all the proceeds are going to children's charity. So it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. I was up really late last night reading it. I think I have about 50 pages to go. I've cried my eyes out several times already. I would really recommend it if you're in the right place for it, but it's a really hard read. It's really sad, but it's also really beautiful.
Okay.
It just reminds you of, you know, just how fragile life is. Just enjoy every day that you have. It's, you know, and kids are so precious, aren't they? Oh my God. He writes so beautifully about his son, Henry. So I would recommend that. And I am also listening to actually 2 nonfiction on the go at the moment on Borrow Box. It just came in for me, so that I'd listen to the Jeanette McCurdy book. I'm glad my mom died. Yeah, it's good. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. I have no idea who she is, to be honest. I had to look her up. iCarly is sort of about 10 years behind where I was in terms of television. I came 10 years after my time. But it kind of does what it says on the tin. It's pretty horrible read in many ways, but she's very brave.
It's hard. It is hard listening. Like, as you said, it is what you expect it to be, especially with a title like that. You know, you're going into kind of expecting it's going to be a pretty toughie.
I think I'm the last person on Bookstagram to read it. I was joking about that with Elaine at home in Books there the other day. She posted a review of it, and I said, I think I'm just going to have to go and read this now because everybody else has read it. But yeah, it's very enjoyable, and I'm planning to read this book next. It's Laurie Colvin, Happy All the Time. So when I finish Rob Delaney's book, I'm going to read this one. It's apparently very funny and life affirming and warm. So I think I need it after a really sad book. So that's a really old book now. That was published in 1978. Okay. So yeah.
So in general, do you prefer books that are plot driven or character driven?
Ideally a bit of both, but probably character driven. If I had to come down on one side or the other, I would definitely be more of a character driven. I love a book with a really richly drawn character. You know, if a character is so well drawn, I think the book then becomes really immersive and the plot is almost secondary. But it is nice that there's a little bit of a plot to it too.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the odd thriller where it's all about the plot and not so much about the characters. But I couldn't read loads of thrillers in a row. I think it just wouldn't do it for me in terms of my reading. I wouldn't feel satisfied, you know. But the odd thriller is brilliant. Yeah. I love just ripping through a good, like Andrea Mara or Liz Nugent or Amanda Cassidy. One of those kind of beach page turners are great, you know. But definitely, character driven books are where it's at for me.
Yeah. Agreed. And actually, like the buddy read that you hosted there a couple of months ago of The Remains of the Day, I think is like an ultimate example of a character driven novel. And I don't know why I hadn't picked it up previously, but I'm forever thankful that I read that with you. I still think about that book.
Oh, I love that book so much. I love that book so much. I know. It's so good. And I actually think it gets better with age.
And I'm glad for you that you enjoyed it as much on the reread.
Oh, it's better, yeah.
You know, it can be disappointing when you reread something many years later, and it's not as good. You know, that's...
I think I enjoyed the writing years ago, but I didn't fully appreciate how sad it was. You know, like I was absolutely bereft this time when I read it. Absolutely love it. Love it. Yeah.
I definitely think being at a certain age in your life where you can see almost, not that you are that person, but you can see, you know, in 20 years that, God, I can imagine that happening, you know, whereas when you're reading it in your 20s, for example, like that stage of your life seems so far away that it's almost kind of hard to imagine being in those shoes, you know?
Oh, definitely, because, you know, it's only really when you're older that I suppose regret kicks in a big way because it's kind of too late to do anything about it. And that's, if the book could be summed up in one word, it's just regret, isn't it? And it's just so sad. So yeah, definitely one to, if you're young and in your 20s and you thought it was good but not brilliant, go back to it in your 40s or 50s and guarantee it will hit hard. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any genre that you've grown to appreciate or enjoyed thanks to the recommendations of others?
Yeah, probably young adult. Again, the two genres that I don't really read much of are fantasy and romance. But young adult, I would have said as well. I don't really read any young adult anymore. I would have said that a few years ago. Whereas I've read quite a few now over the last year, and I've enjoyed all of them. You know, and Claire, St. Leo's College Library. I mean, she always has some brilliant recommendations. Some I know I just would never read, like some of the fantasy ones. Anything with vampires is out for me. But then others that I picked up, like she recommended one recently called White Rose, which was a book written in verse. A young adult book written in verse, which, like, honestly, I probably would never have picked that up only for Claire's review. But I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. And I loved Clap When You Land as well. That was the Tired Mommy Book Club pick last year, I think. I really enjoyed that too. Something I wouldn't have picked up. And Stay Another Day as well. That was kind of young adult or new adult, I think, as the genre is called. I really enjoyed that as well. So yeah, I think young adult, I'd be much more open now to reading young adult books. I think it keeps you young as well, do you know? Yeah. Like, you've got to keep in touch with what young people are reading. You know, you've got to be aware of what the issues are for young people, like, especially when you're raising them. You know, I just think it's too easy to lose touch by sticking to books written by authors you've loved for years. Yeah. You know, I think it's important to kind of keep up with the times and, you know.
And Claire St. Leo's College, her page is brilliant for recommendations. If you are interested in that genre at all, it's fantastic. And what, you know, just the work that they're doing with promoting reading in that school is wonderful. It's fabulous to see. So my next question was, do you read nonfiction? Which I know you do. But if so, what has been your favourite or standout nonfiction book for you?
Yes, I do read nonfiction. I love nonfiction. Last year, my favourite book of the year last year was Fintan O Toole's book, and I know you've read it recently too, Rebecca.
I did.
And you really enjoyed it as well.
5 stars.
I had a Kindle copy, I had an audio copy, and I went and got a paperback copy as well. And my husband is reading it too. Well, he's almost finished it actually, but it takes him longer to read a book than me, mainly because he has a busy job. Yeah, it is an absolutely superb read. I think it's not going to have the same resonance for someone who's not Irish, I don't think.
Yeah.
But for anyone who's Irish, like, it's just a superb read. Yeah. So that would be one of my all-time favourites. I think it's a book I'll go back to and, read chapters again in time. Another non-fiction favourite is The End of Where We Begin by Rosalind Russell. Did you read that one, Rebecca?
I did.
It was a retired mommy book club pick at one stage as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I love that one too. It was a really hard-hitting book about 3 people living in South Sudan who were displaced by the war there, and that really had a profound effect on me, I have to say. So those would be 2 kind of standout non-fiction, but I love non-fiction. Love it. Can't get enough of it. Bessborough, sorry, I didn't mention that. That's another one by Deirdre Finnerty. It's an easy read in the sense that it's a page turner, but it's a really hard read in terms of the content because it's so upsetting and it affects so many people directly and indirectly in Ireland even today, because it makes you angry and it makes you really sad and upset too,
So definitely it's one of those books that makes you angry, makes you think, makes you sad, makes you feel all of the emotions. So is there a particular book or series then that has a special meaning to you?
Well, I already mentioned The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. That is one purely because my dad gave it to me as one of his favourite books. And he gave it to me when I was 13 and I've read it so many times and I love it. So that is just a very special book to me in terms of that connection with my childhood and, my love of reading. And then I think the Elena Ferrante Neapolitan Quartet. I don't read that many book series actually, but that is one that has really stuck with me. I love her books anyway, but that was my jumping off point for reading Ferrante and completely fell in love with her. Loved that little group that I was reading with too. I think it was Adele and Claire and Adele's Reads and St. Leo's College Library and the Literary Lexicologist in the States. We had a lovely little reading group. It was super. Great series. Italian author. Obviously, she writes under a pseudonym. She writes about really sort of toxic friendship between 2 young girls and how that progresses over the years all the way into adulthood and then into old age. And it's really thrilling writing, really immersive, really dense at the beginning in the first book as you're getting to know a whole cast of characters from their extended families and the community in Naples and stuff.
Okay.
Some really hard-hitting topics, domestic violence and poverty, but it's the whole cast of characters so richly drawn. The whole world is so richly drawn. Very, very memorable book. And I felt really sad when I turned the last page that was over. I'd love to read those again for the first time. I wonder how they would read on a reread. I'm going to give it a few years before I reread them, but I definitely will. But those are books I'd recommend. Yeah, I read them over a summer and it was the perfect time to read them actually. June, July, August. We read the 4 books and they were excellent. So it's a series. And then if you could call it a series, Emily St. John Mandel's books too. They're more of a world than a series, they're sort of, she has these 3 books that are all part of the same universe, but I do love those too.
That might be a plan now for the summer actually, that I might do them myself and see what I think of them. So if we move on to some random fun ones for a little bit, if you had to have dinner or if you could have dinner with 3 fictional characters or 3 authors, who would they be?
So I've picked 2 fictional characters and 1 author just to be really awkward. I'm going to pick, and we've talked about this book actually already. So The Remains of the Day by Ishiguro. I picked Stevens and Miss Kenton. We've got to put things right there. I'd like to have them over for dinner and try and do a bit of matchmaking. Maybe if we could get them to get it all out before that bus stop scene. Would love to have those over for dinner. And I'd probably have Louis Theroux then as well, just because I know he could probe Stevens and get it all out of him,
This is a very well thought out answer, in fairness.
Oh, then we could pair off, you see, myself and Louis and Stevens and Miss Kenton.
I see the ulterior motive there coming
Lord.
through now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Always.
Okay, well, that's good. And if you were stuck in a broken elevator with the main character of your current read, how screwed would you be?
I'd be an absolute emotional mess if I was with Rob Delaney in a broken elevator. I'm sure he comes across as an absolutely lovely human being, so it would definitely would not be the worst person to be stuck with. But yeah, it'd be sad. Although I guess he's so funny too, he'd make me laugh as well. But I did actually get stuck in a lift when I lived in Frankfurt. Was working in a skyscraper. I was working one weekend. I had to go in on a Saturday. The lift got stuck between two floors and I actually had to be rescued. It was terrifying. They actually had to prise the lift doors open. The fire brigade were called and I had to be pulled up. The lift was actually, someone said to me afterwards, if the lift had fallen as you were getting out, you could have been shot in half. And I was like, oh my God. So I've never thought about lifts in the same way since. But yeah, I actually got stuck in a lift for 2 hours in Frankfurt, but had a book with me. I don't know what it was, but I would have had a book in my handbag. I can remember reading. I don't know what I was reading. Yeah.
Kind of moving on to something a little bit more serious again. Like, will you always be just a reader? And I think I kind of know the answer to this, but will you always be just a reader or have you any aspirations of writing as well?
Okay, so yeah, I will always be a reader, but I would like to do more writing. Will I ever be writing books? I don't know, but I would like to try. So last year I sort of spontaneously wrote an opinion piece on religion in Irish schools and sacrament preparation in Irish schools, so for communion and confirmation. And I submitted it to 2 newspapers and the Irish Examiner contacted me very promptly and said they wanted to publish it. So it came kind of out of nowhere. It came from a place of frustration really on my part at how much time my 8-year-old at the time was spending down in the church at school when we aren't a religious family. And the children are opted out of religion at school, insofar as you can do that in a Catholic school in Ireland. So that piece was published and I had a huge response to it. I posted about it on my Instagram and had a huge response to it, particularly from teachers, from parents too, but a huge response from teachers. And I wrote a follow-up piece, which I submitted to the Examiner, and they again said they wanted to publish that. So it was a complete whirlwind, if I'm honest. I felt really exposed, having never even submitted anything for publication, never had anything published before. It was a little bit scary, and while I got loads of support online, people online were really lovely, especially people in the book community were really, really lovely. I did feel a little bit exposed, I suppose, in my personal life. I don't know how people write these types of opinion pieces on a regular basis. You know, I suppose people in my social circle at home and even in my immediate circle maybe weren't as pleased with what I'd written. So it's a really sensitive subject, obviously, for people. I don't know where I'm going to go next with that. I will always advocate for equality of access to education for children. I just don't think schools should be allowed to discriminate on the basis of religion, whether that's on enrolment or whether that's during, children's time in school. I just think it's wrong in this day and age. And I would like to see much greater access to multi-denominational schools for children. I don't think there are any non-denominational schools in Ireland, but it seems to be proven pretty difficult to get more multi-denominational schools. 90% of Irish primary schools are Catholic. So without going into that whole substantive issue anyway, I really enjoyed the experience of writing, but I'm not sure where that's going next. It's all a bit organic, to be honest. As I said, it was sort of spontaneous, but I do love to write, and I've been writing fiction in bursts since I'd say September 2021. With family life the way it is, it's so busy. Like today, for example, I have a child at home sick. I tend to write in bursts as opposed to having a very structured approach to writing. One of my aims for 2023 is to put a little bit more structure around it and have a fixed time period, either each day or X number of times a week, where I will sit down and write. Whereas it's a bit more like, right, I have a few hours here, so I'll grab them and do it. But I have begun, like, I've wrote a few short stories, but I have never sent them anywhere to be published. No one's ever read them. I've written a prologue and the first chapter of a book. I have a notebook just full of notes with the plot and storyline and characters of a book that I have sort of begun working on, but I don't know if it will ever see the light of day. It's definitely, it's in my genes, it's in my bones. My granddad loved history and writing and reading, and wrote a book on genealogy, like a tiny sort of a pamphlet book, like that is not, and my uncle wrote a book too about an airplane crash in County Clare, again, like sort of self-published or whatever, but there's definitely a little bit of that in my family. That's my dad's side of the family, and my dad has written a few short stories and won prizes for them way back in the day, as in like competitions rather than like he won a trip to Switzerland on the Orient Express with my mum, for a story that he wrote. So there's a little bit of an itch to be scratched. So, but I would definitely, like, now it's just chaotic with 4 kids and they're all so young and life is so busy. But my youngest is starting primary school next September, so I would hope to put a little bit more structure around my writing. And who knows? We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and I think we'd all be really eager to see what comes of it.
Maybe nothing. Don't want people's hopes or expectations too high.
Going back, I suppose, to what you have written, like one of the reasons that we did want to speak to you, partly because you are such an avid reader and like your reviews are always fantastic. But the fact that you have, I suppose, your platform, kind of your Bookstagram, in a way has become a place for you to advocate for change or raising awareness of issues that are important to you. And did you ever envisage when you started your Bookstagram that would be the case?
No.
That you would have that space, or that this is where it would end up going?
No, absolutely not. And I mean that genuinely, like it was entirely accidental. That piece that I wrote, just sat down one morning and I must have written it in an hour. I was just incredibly frustrated with how things were going. And, the piece was published and I posted about it and got huge engagement, and my account grew a lot on the back of that. So I think there are some people who follow me for the books and the books only. And then there are other people who follow me for the sort of religion in school side of things only. And then there are people who are a little bit interested in both. And I wouldn't want to alienate anyone, it's not like my page isn't a place where people who practice their religion can't come. Like I would be of the view, like I would fight for your right to practice your religion more than anybody. I believe in freedom of expression. I just believe that it should be done in your own time and not on taxpayers' time, But no, I never thought that I would have a platform, and sometimes I'm not all that comfortable about it either. I wonder, am I overstepping the mark? Should I just stick to the books? It's a daily battle for me. Sometimes I'll see a piece in the paper, I'll be like, oh, I want to post about that, but
it's definitely not overstepping the mark. If it's something you want to post about, it's something you can post about. But I was just about to say, I can imagine that there is a certain wariness on your part, because you just don't know how people are going to respond to certain things, especially if, as you said, for some people it is quite a sensitive topic, even though at the same time that there will be a significant amount of people who are very glad that you have shared that and are very supportive of it as well.
Yeah, I've had very little backlash. Sometimes people message me and say, do you get a lot of hate? I actually get nearly none, to be honest. Like, I try and be as respectful as possible in the way that I do it. Sometimes that's hard. When you read about some of the stuff, like recently, all the stories that came out of Blackrock College, like they're just horrendous, and all the other Spiritan schools. And, the Irish Times have ran a piece for the last 2 or 3 weeks about corporal punishment in schools. And so much of it, like, there's just so much secrecy in Irish society. There's so many dark secrets hidden, so many things that are taboo that people can't talk about and don't want to talk about. And the institution that, are responsible for perpetrating and covering up all these things are the patron of 90% of our primary schools. And I struggle myself to understand how people can just accept that as the status quo, But I accept that some people just do, There are people who it doesn't seem to bother them, but it bothers me. And that's, I just do feel compelled to talk about it. So I do talk about it. But sometimes before I post anything like that, I always have that moment of self-doubt where I say, like, should I really say this? Like, should I say it? And most of the time then I just do, But it's not to say that I don't have doubt, but I don't get lots of hate, surprisingly, I do think that if you don't like what I'm saying, just don't follow me. Like that goes for Instagram generally, if someone's page is annoying you, just hit unfollow, you just don't need that in your life. You don't need to feel irritated. You shouldn't feel irritated by someone's social media, someone you don't even know, So you should only follow people who kind of make life interesting, make you happy, make you smile, make you think. But if people are making you unhappy, then just unfollow them. Life's too short.
Yeah. And just even like a couple of the books that you had mentioned, especially the non-fiction ones like Bessborough and the Fintan O Toole one. The Fintan O Toole one was really eye-opening in terms of how he put all of it together. You know, the influence of religion, even on, you know, on politics, and lots of decisions that had been made in the past within Irish society. The vast majority of them were made based off of what was deemed acceptable. And I have that in air quotes for anyone that can't see me. And listening to it kind of all put together in one book was just enraging, to be honest. There were so many parts of that, like, that I was just going, wow, like, when you put it that way, like, how can we not be talking about this? You know?
Yeah, I sometimes think, like, we have all these, you know, like mother and baby homes, religion in schools, you know, corporal punishment, sexual abuse of minors, industrial schools, but like, sometimes people don't join up all the dots in their head that this was all of society, you know. And like the mother and baby homes report, it really annoyed me. It was such a whitewash. You know, they effectively just blamed people for putting their daughters in there. Society was blamed. You know, there was a reason why people put their daughters in there. They were brainwashed to believe that that was the right thing to do because their daughters were sinners because they had sex outside of marriage, you know. Like, these people didn't come up with these ideas on their own. You know, our constitution was written by John Charles McQuaid and Eamon de Valera. You know, the church played such a huge role in the formation of our state, the writing of our constitution. Religion and, you know, our education system was all built by the Catholic Church. They denied access to secondary education. You know, you'll have read that. That's a brilliant part of the book, I thought. You know, when Donogh O'Malley in the 60s announced free access to secondary education, like, the church were up in arms over it. They didn't want people becoming educated, because when people become educated, they realise that, well, wait a minute, actually, you know, what have we been taught here, you know?
Yeah, they ask questions.
Exactly. So he just went ahead and announced it without getting the say-so of the church, you know, and then it was too late to row back on it. They couldn't. It was such a popular move that Fianna Fáil didn't want to row back on it. I do think Fintan O Toole's book does a really good job of showing just how pervasive the Catholic Church's influence was across the state, and, you know, through the decades, even right up to this day. You know, they still have their tentacles in our hospitals, in our schools, you know, just across society generally, even in you know, within politics and a lot of our, you know, state departments, Department of Education, you know, things like that. I do think he does a really super job of just showing how complex a web they've woven over us, you know?
Like, as I was reading to just the things that were coming up, like, I knew them, but it's when you hear them put together, you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, why are more people not angry about this? Why are more people not having these conversations? But I think it's great then that these books are coming out and that people are having conversations, and people like yourself are sharing these things and getting the interaction going, because if no one is talking about it, nothing is ever going to change. But it's how much talking about it needs to happen before it changes then is the thing. Like,
yeah, and I think Fintan O Toole's book, like, it's a really chunky book, and people are going to look at it and go, oh, non-fiction, and it's so dense. But like, that's the perfect example of where the audiobook is a really useful tool to help you get into that book, you know. But it's a perfect example of a topic that people should read about. But because he's got like a personal anecdote for each chapter, you know, it's all kind of seen through his sort of coming of age kind of prism. It's very well done. He makes it personable. He makes it relatable, you know.
So our last round is a quick fire round. If you're willing to do that, it's literally like this or that. Choose one or the other.
Yeah, brilliant.
Excellent. Okay, so number 1, bookmark or dog ear?
Oh, bookmark, all the way. Dog ears are for the devil.
Number 2, ebook or audiobook?
Ooh, ebook.
Oh, okay. Number 3, plot driven or character driven? We've kind of done it, but
character driven.
Okay. Number 4, would you rather be a librarian or own your own bookshop?
Own my own bookshop. Isn't that just the dream? A bookshop with a cafe. Oh my God, would love it.
I was just about to say it. A bookshop cafe. Yeah. Oh yeah. The dream is right. Number 5, read by the fire or read on the beach?
Oh, by the fire, definitely.
Lovely. Number 6, would you rather read a new manuscript by your favourite author and have to tell them you thought it was awful, or read 50 Shades of Grey out loud to your extended family?
Oh God! I read the new manuscript by my favourite author and tell them it was awful. Yeah.
Oh, that
Bit of
was
tough love. Chances are it wouldn't be awful, and I could put a positive spin on it. But you know me, I'm known for my honesty, so I probably wouldn't mince my words. Yeah.
Number 7, lending books to friends or no?
Oh, lending books to friends. Share the joy, share the love. Absolutely.
Excellent. Number 8, DNF, do not finish or power through?
DNF. Life's too short.
Excellent. Number 9, would you rather be stuck on an island without a book or be stuck in a room full of books that you hated?
Be stuck in a room full of books I hated, probably. An island with no books would be... Yeah, I'm sure I could find something to love in one of those crappy books in the room. Yeah, bad books are better than no books.
Well, that's fair enough. Number 10, paperback or hardcover?
Paperback. I love to break the spine. I know that's controversial, but I love a paperback.
Oh, controversial. Yeah.
I find it so satisfying. Like, I love cracking a spine. It's the most satisfying thing. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed your podcast, I have to say. I've really enjoyed the first 2 episodes.
This being able to chat with someone about books is what it's all about, you know. And while we are quite familiar, myself and Claire are quite familiar with you and your reviews, you know, we were saying like we'd love to spread the love a bit. And even though I'm sure most people on Bookstagram are probably following you, for anyone that isn't, we wanted to bring you to their attention. And especially the fact that you are such a prolific reader, plus your platform, kind of you are out there talking about important things as well. Plus you are super nice. You were one of the nicest, you know, Bookstagram people out there. And I can say that having met you twice as well, having been lucky enough to. So.
The feeling is very much mutual. Like, honestly, everybody I've met through Bookstagram has just been so lovely and kind and funny. It's wonderful. It's just one big love.
It's such a good community. That's it. That is it. Yeah. So we thank you very much for coming on, and can't wait to have the episode out in the coming days.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you, Claire, too.
What a gorgeous interview. Aoife, thank you so much for coming on to chat to Rebecca, and I'm so sorry I wasn't able to make it. I really hope that people have taken something away from what Aoife had to say, particularly around, you know, swapping out the phone for a book if you find that you're aimlessly scrolling through your phone, and also just having a book with you. I thought it was very funny, although it must have been frightening at the time, very funny that you actually were stuck in an elevator, and that was one of our questions. I loved that you had a book though to keep you company. There's a really good quote, and I'd say everybody's probably seen it at this stage, but it's that a book gives you somewhere to go when you can't leave or when you're stuck where you are. And I think that is an extremely appropriate thing to say when you're stuck in a lift for 2 hours and have a book to kind of help you escape. I'm claustrophobic and I don't know if I would have been able to cope with that situation. The thought of being stuck in a lift absolutely terrifies me. But I'll have my book, so if it ever does happen to me, I hope I won't have my toddler with me, but I hope that I have a book to keep me going. I absolutely adored the chat around young adults books as well. And interestingly enough, we were going to choose a young adult book, a YA book, for our February read. And we didn't do it. And we just didn't know whether people would be interested in reading YA books or not. I am going to put up a poll on our stories and ask people to just answer. It'll only take you about 2 seconds. Click on it like, do you have an interest in reading a young adult novel? And we'll just see like what the kind of demographic is, whether people seem to be interested or not. And if you guys are up for it, we would love to explore a new genre with you. So for this episode, we usually give recommendations at the end of our episodes, and I'm going to focus on some young adult fiction that I have read over the last couple of years, books that really stood out to me because I think like what Rebecca and Aoife were saying is really important, that, okay, they might not necessarily be relevant to us and to the problems that we're looking at and facing in our lives, but it allows us to, you know, to see what's relevant to our children and the teenagers in our worlds. The first book that I'm going to recommend is the first book in a series. It's called Noughts and Crosses, and it's written by Malorie Blackman. What's interesting about this book is that it discusses race. What Blackman does in this is she flips it on its head. The Noughts are the lighter skinned people who are seen to be colourless, and then the Crosses are the ruling class, and they are darker skinned. And what happens in this book is we've got two characters, Sethi, who is a cross, she's a member of the dark skinned class, and Callum, who is a Nought, who is a colourless member of the underclass. So we have these two characters, and they have been friends since they were children, but that's as far as it can go, because in their world they can't mix. Basically, we get a kind of a Romeo and Juliet story where, you know, they're not meant to be together, but they want to be together, and a romance kind of develops. It's done extremely well, and I think for me, I found it very interesting to look at race in this angle, because it forced me to consider my privilege and just how we don't get a choice in the life that we're born into, yet all of these societal judgments can be cast upon you based on the colour of your skin or your background. And I think it's a very good book for teenagers to read, because it will cause them to question these kind of things. Why do I believe certain things? Is it right that I have judged people because of certain elements of their lives? And just how we can be quite judgmental without, you know, adequate reason to have cast any judgment on someone. So that's a really good one. The next recommendation that I have also looks at the topic of race, but from a different angle again. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. In this book, we have our main character called Star Carter. She is a black girl, and she is living in a black community, but she attends a school in a more privileged area where most of the children attending that school are white. She attends a party with her childhood friend Khalil, and they're in the car on the way home. They get pulled over, and Khalil is just shot before her. He gets something, or reaches to get something out of the car, and gets shot and killed. And it just really shows her experience of this obviously extremely traumatic and disgusting event. It kind of casts this shadow on the way in which she lives her life, because she has never thought that these people had looked down on her, but can see now that there is still an awful lot of racism in the world in which she lives. And her exploration of that topic of friendships, of race, of identity is just, I really, really loved it. It's also been adapted into a movie, which I think I've watched. I'm pretty sure I've watched it, and it was quite good. I have watched it, yeah. It's a good one. So definitely read the book before you watch the movie. I apologise for my memory being shocking, but I did watch it because I remember thinking that it was very well done. The next one that I have is one that I think everyone would have heard of, another one that's been adapted to a movie, and it is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Very, very emotional book. You will need the tissues for this one, but it is a lovely, eye-opening book for young people to read as well. So in this book, we follow a young teenage girl who gets a diagnosis of cancer, and she's attending a cancer support group, and she meets this other boy when she's there. So most of these books, because they are young adults, they will have some kind of a thread of romance going through them. So our main character is Hazel, meets Augustus, and basically they form this beautiful friendship which leads to romance, and just the question around, like, should we be together? It's a gorgeous exploration of our mortality and how we are not exempt from the more frightening elements of life. It was lovely to see a book where younger people were being shown as having had to deal with such horrible situations and just moral issues. It a very good one. Again, will open up for an awful lot of discussion. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous story. It's very, 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 very sad. But it is wonderful too. So that's another really lovely one. The next one that I'm going to mention is one that I've talked about before. It's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. And I know I've talked about it before. It follows Pippa, who is doing a school assignment, and she decides to do her assignment on a case that happened 5 years ago, where a girl called Andy Bell went missing. But basically, she's trying to figure out if the person who was seen to be guilty actually was guilty or not. And she starts delving a little bit deeper into things, and just the stuff that she uncovers is very, very interesting. And I can't really go much further than that without giving things away. But it is a great book, just like on trusting your instinct, and people aren't always who they might seem to be. Just those kind of themes running through it. It's great. I loved it. It had me hooked, and I think a book that just keeps you turning the pages because you have to find out what happens next is a great way to get kids reading. The next book that I'd recommend is one that I read again a long time ago, but it is absolutely stunning. The way that it's written is just so artistic, and that ties in very nicely with the theme of the book. It's called I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. In this book we have a set of twins. We've got Noah and Jude, who were inseparable as children, and then as they've grown older, for some reason they don't really talk to each other anymore. And it's told in a dual narrative style, where the earlier years we hear from Noah, and then in later years we hear from Jude. So what the twins actually don't realise is that they each only have half the story, and they need to kind of find their way back to each other in order to understand what has gone so terribly wrong within their own relationship. And it is just like, I just remember putting this book down at times and going like, wow, the descriptions, the language, it just feels like the book has been curated nearly, not even created. It's just absolutely fantastic. But it is definitely one that I will go back to and I will reread, because I just think it was one of the most stunning books that I've ever come across. So that one, even for yourself, not necessarily even just for a teenager in your life, but it is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's not one that I've seen reviewed, or I don't see many pictures of it up online. Anytime that I have come across somebody discussing it or mentioning it, they've only ever had positive things to say about it. It is just fab. So that one is a gorgeous one that I would recommend. The last one I'm going to mention, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on them because I think most people will have seen the movies, and they're The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. So they are an absolutely excellent set of books. I could not wait to pick up the next one. We've already had Catherine Walsh on, who said that she absolutely adores that series. They're just a brilliant, brilliant read. So another brilliant book. And again, I think I was probably only meant to recommend one book, but these are ones that have really stood out for me. I really love them all. If I had to tell you to start with one, I think I would tell you to start with I'll Give You the Sun or the Noughts and Crosses series, one of those ones. So there you go. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of another chapter, and we cannot wait to get recording the next one, which is going to be great fun altogether. Our book of the month read, which is Paper Cup. This episode of Another Chapter podcast is going to be released on a Tuesday, and I will have just started the book on the day before this is released. So if you haven't read the book yet, I will be reading it from the 16th to the 20th of January, and if you would like to read along with me, you're more than welcome to join me. There is a story saved in our highlights where we have got a breakdown of the book. It's broken down into some manageable chunks for every day of the week. So if you don't want to be reading it by yourself, or if you want to be messaging me as you read it, you are more than welcome to pop on and have a chat with me. So yeah, pop along to our Instagram page at Another Chapter Podcast. There are full stops between all those words there. And you can message me there, or you can contact me on my own Instagram page, which is Getting Back to Books, with full stops between all of those words as well. And yeah, I can't wait. We will be opening up the group chat then on Friday the 20th. There will be polls and question boxes put up on our stories as well. So if you want to get involved after you've read the book, that's the way to do it. And I can't wait to read the book and just to chat to everybody about what they think of it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it if you are going to read along, and I just can't wait to see what everyone has to say about it. So again, we hope that you've all enjoyed this episode. Again, a huge thank you to Aoife for coming on and having the chats with Rebecca. She is just a wealth of information when it comes to books. Wonderful guidance can be gotten from Aoife if you're ever stuck with something. She's always just so kind and so generous with her time. So definitely give her a follow if you're not following her already. Again, her Instagram handle is at Little Cass Reads. Beautiful person, beautiful interview. Thanks so much again, and I hope you all enjoyed. See you.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Another Chapter Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share to keep the book conversation going. Thank you to Helen Becerra for the graphics, Mark Neville for the mixing, and to each of our contributors. Music is Make It Work by All Good Folks.
Don't forget to follow along on Instagram at Another Chapter Podcast. We'll see you there.